joining virtually, could you please have your video on during the meeting? And to all, we are live streaming this meeting through the RCDSO's YouTube channel so that members of the public, profession, and other interested parties can watch our proceedings. Just to note that though we have Hannah Weinberger, our professional chair, in the room today, according to our bylaws, this meeting, which is the first after the district elections, must be called to order by me, acting as interim presiding officer. Once we have completed the election reporting, I'm going to turn the proceedings back to Hannah. And now I would like to turn to the official opening of our meeting with a land acknowledgement. The RCDSO is on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. These traditional lands are known to some as Toronto. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples from across Turtle Island. This land is also part of the Dish with One Spoon territory, a treaty between allied nations to peaceably share and care for this land. We accept our responsibility to each other and this land we live and work on in a spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We are committed to actively supporting the necessary work towards truth, reconciliation, and equity. We embrace the role we play in regulating dentists, in protecting the public interest, and in strengthening our partnerships with Indigenous communities to advance access to safe and equitable oral health care. Thank you. Council, before we move into our business this morning, I want to share some sad news with you. David Bishop, a recently retired public member of our council, passed away last weekend after a long illness. David, as you know, joined the council in 2019, and he served ably, effectively, and with great kindness to all of us. And we will pass on our condolences to his family from the college and from the council. Thank you, Council. I will now present the report on the 2024 elections to Council in accordance with our bylaws. This item is for your information. The election took place on December 11th, 2024. The candidates have been informed of the results and the vote count, and there have been no requests for a recount. To the newly constituted Council, I present the results. It is a list of all Council members, including public members, and the university selected members. It should be visible on your screens now, and it is in your package on pages 11 to 13. I would like to formally welcome our new council members. I know that you will find this work engaging and meaningful. Beyond that, you will meet and work with exceptional colleagues. Every day you are with us, you help ensure the quality of oral health care for all Ontarians. And now I'd like to present each new council member with their PIN. When I call your name, can you please come forward to accept your PIN? First is Dr. Daniel Fortino. And next we have Dr. Neil Gajar. And third, we have Dr. Iliad Honoparvar. Please join me in welcoming our new council members, returning council members, and congratulations to the full council of RCDSO 2025 to 2027. I will now begin the roll call, after which I will hand the chair duties back to Hannah. So I know we have many of you in the room. We have some virtually. For those virtually, please, I will do this in alphabetical order, so just be prepared, a name or two away to unmute and tell us that you're here. Starting with Dr. Nalan Bhargava.
Present.
That was great. Yeah. Ram Chopra.
Present.
James Culliver.
Present.
Christina Cordero.
Present.
Peter Delane.
Present.
Ellie Fisher.
Present.
Daniel Fortino,
Present.
Neil Gajar, Noha Goma,
Present.
Daniel Haas,
Present.
Iliad Honorparver,
Present.
Vivian Hu,
Present.
Nizar Ladak. We're expecting Nizar, so we'll record him when he arrives. Anthony Licio,
Present.
Anthony Mayer,
Present.
Harinder Sandhu,
Present.
Brian Smith,
Present.
Osama Solomon,
Present.
Robin Somerville,
Present.
Rod Stableford. Rod has sent regrets. Mark Trudell,
Present.
Aaron Walker,
Present.
Judy Welikovich,
Present.
and Deborah Wilson. Thank you. What do you, Hanno?
Thank you, Dan. We'll now move to the Declaration of Conflicts of Interest. Declaration of conflicts is required by the Ministry of Health College Performance Measurement Framework. A link to the new online 2025 Annual Conflict of Interest Declaration form was circulated with Council meeting materials. In future, a summary report will be appended to the Council meeting package. As a reminder, the college is working with PricewaterhouseCoopers on the PLP divestment project, and there will be a short update today. So I will ask if any members of council feel they have a conflict of interest, real or perceived, to declare for any of the agenda items to be discussed today. Seeing none, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. As a governance best practice, we use the consent agenda as a time-saving mechanism. On the consent agenda are several items that are for council's information, acceptance, and ratification. Council will be asked to approve these in a single motion. Council may ask clarifying questions about an item on the consent agenda. If members wish to have a conversation about an item, we will take it out of the consent agenda and address it later on in our meeting. I would ask that you use a very high bar when asking to remove an item from the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are in your meeting materials starting from pages 14 to 105. Are there any questions or other changes on the consent agenda? Seeing none, could I have the motion on the screen, please? And motion number 1, that the following items be approved and or received for information by council. 1, approval of the RCDSO council meeting minutes, December 5th, 2024, and 2, council evaluation survey results, December 5th, 2024. And if I could have a mover, please, moved by Nalan, seconded by Ellie. And a reminder again, if you would raise your virtual hand, even though some of you are present, it's going to make the counting of the motion much easier. So all those in favor, please raise your virtual hand. I'm still waiting for. Okay, thank you. That motion is carried. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dan for the registrar and CEO remarks. Dan.
Thank you, Hanno. And good morning again, Council. I'm going to have a very brief report this morning. We have a lot to do today. What I want to do is just ground Council, those who are returning and our new members, and some of the mechanics of our meetings. I provide a written report to Council quarterly. So usually, typically, it would be March, June, September, and December. And if we have meetings in between those dates, I usually provide a verbal report only. I will provide these reports in the package of materials, the written report, and try to summarize or add new elements during the oral portion of the content. Every meeting, we will pay very careful attention to our strategic plan as well. So you will always receive the updates on the various projects. And on page 2 of the PDF materials that you have, you can see a high-level overview of the strategic plan. That will be available for you at every meeting as well, with the vision, the mission, the values, and the projects. I also want to draw your attention, because sometimes these can become invisible after they've been in place for a while. At the beginning of every package of materials for council, before you get to the agenda, are some ground rules that have been established by council. These were established over the last 3 or 4 years. On page 3, there's a document engaging council members for effective governance. On pages 4 and 5, there's effective staff-council relationships. And on page 6, there's a glossary of acronyms that are used quite frequently, and we want to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about and organizations that we're referring to. RCDSO, as you know, is a very dynamic and progressive and a large organization. I know that for our new members, you are going to enjoy your time on council, and I look forward to working with you over the next 2 years. And I want you to remember, and something that I said to the new members in orientation last week, is ask anything. No question is off limits. It's really important for you to understand and for you to not be afraid to ask those questions. And that's not just at the meeting, that's in between meetings, calling any of the staff who are expert in their areas and can answer anything. And if they can't, they will certainly look to others to support a response back to you. So with that, I will turn it back to Hanno, and I look forward to working with everybody today and over the next 2 years.
Thank you, Dan. Our next item on our agenda is appointment of officers, and that is regarding the election of the executive committee. And this item is for your decision, and I'm going to turn it right back over to you, Dan, please.
Yes, this is where we'll spend probably the next hour or hour and a half on the election of officers to the executive committee. As the first step in the process, and in accordance with our bylaws, I would like to recommend to council the appointment of 2 returning officers for the supervision of the election to the executive committee. And I'm recommending Jeffrey Goldberg, who's our chief financial officer, and Dana Simon, who's senior counsel at the college and is in the professional conduct and regulatory affairs area. The returning officers will supervise the e-voting. They will receive the vote count and the results of the election, and then report to me as registrar, and I will in turn report back to you. I will walk through the voting procedures in a few minutes, but I wonder if we can have the motion first, and you'll see it on your screen. Motion number 2, that the scrutineers, returning officers for the election of the executive committee of January 23rd, 2025, be Dana Simon and Jeffrey Goldberg. Can I have a motion, please? I see Anthony Licio, and I see Robin Somerville seconding. Any discussion? There's a lot of hands up, so I'm going to call the vote, and this is a simple majority. All in favor? I'm seeing about 21. Great. Thank you. If you could take your hands down, and any opposed? Okay, so that is passed. Thank you, Council. So, Council, today you will be voting for the executive committee by confidential Zoom poll. The voting will be done using Zoom and will be the same experience for those who are here in the room and those who are online. I will walk you through some of the main elements of the voting procedures, and I will repeat these as we go from position to position and ballot to ballot. Angelo Avachelis, who's our manager in communications, and Aldwin Armstrong, our director of IT, will be preparing all ballots, and there will be several today. Angelo will also receive the votes as aggregate numbers only, not individual votes. He will declare to me that all ballots have been cast. Screenshot the results to our returning officers who will review the results. The screenshot is a bar graph with totals per member. The results will be communicated to me by one of the returning officers, and I will convey them to council. And I ask for your patience today. Very much appreciated, as a hybrid meeting presents a few different challenges than if everybody was in the same room. It will take time to prepare each ballot as we go through various combinations of results and potentially nominations. So again, your patience is very much appreciated today. We are preparing ballots in some cases in the moment, so there will be some pauses. These ballots, as I said, are not prepared in advance because we do not know every person who might be nominated or the individuals who may be removed from ballots following votes. Council, all of you will use Zoom on your laptops, and only council members will vote. If you're only on a cell phone and cannot be on Zoom, and I don't think this applies today, but you can email your votes to the returning officers, but by doing so, you are acknowledging that your vote will not be secret. It will be known to Dana. I'm not aware of anyone today who will be using this method, though, as I said. College IT staff is on standby should anyone require tech support during the election process. In the unlikely event that a council member completely loses internet access, but still wants to vote, tech support will put you in touch directly with our returning officer, Dana Simon. This is a very reliable method for voting, but we do ask again for your patience while we take the time to do each step correctly and properly. You do not need to rush. We'll give you plenty of time to check over the course of the morning. If you're putting your name forward, you may be invited several times to address council. An example would be if you put your name forward to stand for president, that would be your first opportunity to address council. In the event of a tie, that would be a second opportunity to address council. And if you're unsuccessful and put your name forward for a subsequent position, then that would be a third opportunity. And finally, if you are elected, you will be invited to say a few words to council. You're not obliged to address council each time, but you will receive the opportunity to do so. Are there any questions on what I've said before we begin the process? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you. So let's begin. Council, you'll be electing 5 positions this morning for the executive committee: president, vice president, a dentist member, and that will obviously depend on who is the successful candidate for president and vice president. There could be one other dentist, there could be 2 other dentists on council, and there will also be a first and a second public member, again, dependent on the results of the president and vice president votes. This is to assure that there's a total of 3 dentists and 2 public members. And this is a new council, so the slate is clean. Should you run for a position and be unsuccessful, you may put your name forward for one of the other positions. Each candidate will have an opportunity, as I said, to address council. I'm not going to be timing, but I would ask you to keep your remarks to 2 minutes or less. If you're not the speaker, please mute your microphones during the address. It's the candidate's opportunity to tell you about their candidacy, and there will be no questions allowed during that component of the meeting. When you address council, I'll remind you that the meeting is open to the public, and as you know this already, but I will remind you, be professional in your comments, mindful of the college's role and your fiduciary duty to the public interest. I encourage you to focus on your skills, experience, and ideas, and please use inclusive language. Before we get to speeches, I will just do a quick overview of voting. Candidates will be listed in alphabetical order by last name. You may only vote for one candidate on the ballot, and you may only vote once in each round of voting. Only council members vote, as I said. Candidates, of course, may vote for themselves. Do not close or minimize the ballot or the polling screen before you vote. It will appear on your screen, and you'll see that momentarily. To register your vote, click the circle beside the name of the person that you wish to vote for, and then press submit at the bottom of the ballot. You may click between the candidates until you press submit. So it will not be calculated or included until you submit it. And double check, please, that you've clicked on the candidate you intend to vote for, because once you submit your ballot, it is final and it can't be changed. Our poll coordinator, Angelo, and the returning officers will see numbers and percentages, but as I said, they cannot see who voted for whom. The total number of ballots that we should see are 22. I'm assuming Nizar hasn't, oh, Nizar is here, is 23. Thank you. The winner is the first person to receive a majority of the votes. So in this case, that will be 12. I will describe the tie-breaking process if we reach that scenario. So council, we will now hear from candidates for president. I've received one name prior to this meeting for the position of president, Dr. Harinder Sandhu. Are there other nominations or self-nominations from the floor? And please ensure, council, that if you are nominating someone else, that you have talked to that person prior to this meeting. So I'll ask again, are there any nominations or self-nominations from the floor? Seeing none, thank you, council. The nominations are closed. And Dr. Sandhu, Dr. Harinder Sandhu, you have been elected for president by acclamation for the 2025-2027 RCDSO Council. Congratulations. Dr. Sandhu, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Esteemed colleagues, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you today. It's my passion for being service to others and the spirit of giving back which drives my work every day. My public service of last 40 years is on record. Over the past 2 years, I have been deeply inspired by the collaborative spirit, collective leadership, and shared commitment of this council. Together, we have navigated our responsibilities without conflict, with alignment between the council, the senior leadership team, and the RCDSO staff. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you, particularly Mr. Faulkner, Hannah Weinberger, our legal counsel, Mr. Alan Braunstein, and the entire RCDSO staff. Throughout this time, I have valued our one-on-one conversation. Your insights have been instrumental in guiding my communication with staff, system partners, our profession, and the public. These moments have reaffirmed that our strength lies in our collective dedication to public protection. RCDSO holds a unique position operating with significant autonomy under RHPA. However, our work relies heavily on the diligence and professionalism of our members, who uphold the standards we set. Their contributions deserve our recognition and support. Looking ahead, I want to outline our priorities for the next 2 years and beyond. This spring, we will develop our 10-year vision document. It's a rare opportunity to share a strategic plan that addresses not just the next 3 years, but the challenges of the coming decade. I urge all of you to actively participate, as this plan will lay the foundation for our initiatives and succession planning. Our governance committee is driving crucial reforms with transparency as a core value. Financial stability has been achieved, and every decision will be made with fiscal prudence. The PLP divestment will also be finalized during this year. We shall continuously do the critical evaluation of council work. That is the only way to evolve and achieve regulatory excellence. An arm's length evaluation of work will be ongoing. Equitable care, particularly for individuals with disabilities, remains a priority. While programs like CDCP have removed some financial barriers, challenges such as staff shortages persist. We will continue advocating and offering our own solutions to improve access to care for all Ontarians. And as we heard, your new political climate, we may have to look at how we can influence the powers to be to carry on with CDCP and not tinker with it. And we have to have that discussion, how RCDSO can participate in the discussion. As market pressures may create gaps in professionalism, we will launch a professionalism document this year. Working closely with Ontario's 2 dental schools, we'll emphasize these values to future dentists, ensuring our support for their growth and development. Advances in technology present both opportunities and challenges. We will dedicate significant effort to prepare and guide our profession for the ethical use of emerging technologies. Finally, I propose more frequent discussion to address pressing issues promptly and with vigor. Our focus must always remain on public interest, even as we navigate evolving circumstances. With these priorities in mind, I humbly seek your support for next 2 years, which you have already reaffirmed. It has been an honor to serve alongside you, and I look forward to what we can achieve over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhu. And at this point, I will ask Dr. Sandhu if he would like to assume the chair's role, or if, with your permission, if you would like me to continue chairing the
Dan,
election
please
process.
continue.
Thank you. We'll now turn to the election for vice president. And again, as I said, this is a clean slate. Anyone who was not successful for president can self-nominate for vice president. And I've received 3 indications of interest prior to the meeting: Dr. Nalan Bhargava, Dr. Anthony Licio, and Mark Trudell. I'm going to first turn to those 3 individuals to ensure that they're still willing to let their name stand. Dr. Bhargava, are you willing to let your name stand for vice president? Thank you. Dr. Anthony Licio, are you willing to let your name stand for vice president?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And Mark Trudell, are you willing to let your name stand for vice president?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations from the floor for vice president? Seeing none, in alphabetical order, I will call on each candidate to provide their remarks, starting with Nalan Bhargava.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nalan Bhargava, and I'm a full-time practicing dentist and have been for over 35 years. In my career, I've started 2 dental clinics, so I fully understand what it takes to run a dental office in this province. As well, over the last 20 years, I've been fortunate to take part in so many different boards, committees, associations, and groups. And I'll just give you some example. I'm the past president of the Ottawa Dental Society, where we spearheaded the movement to build the Ottawa Hospital Dental Clinic. That was back in 2001. I'm a past president of the Ottawa Girls Hockey Association, where I led the movement to overturn the unfair allocation of city ice between the boys and girls. I created the Maharaja's Ball in the city of Ottawa, which grew to the 2nd largest charity event in the city. And we raised over $1 million for different charities in the city of Ottawa, including increasing the number of public access defibrillators, renovating the palliative care wing at Briere Hospital, building the Ottawa Senators' Rink of Dreams. I've also been a member of the board of the Briere Hospital Foundation and United Way Ottawa. And of course, 4 years here on RCDSO Council, 2 years on the executive committee, and I've served on discipline, pension, registration, and currently on the standards working group. The one thing I've learned is that when groups, staff, board members, stakeholders join hands to achieve common good, great things can happen. And that's what I see here. And what great things do I see for the RCDSO? What's my dream here? And basically 3 things. Excellence and efficiency in administration, that's 1. 2, correct regulation, that's 2. And 3, investment in IT, that's a 3rd thing. And let me just elaborate. We are a disseminator of information. So we need to do that effectively and cost efficiently. We need to administer with excellence. It lowers the cost for the college. It lowers the cost for practicing dentists when we disseminate information correctly. And we're headed to a point, I think, where with new immigration laws coming, with the fact that Ontario, for the first time since Confederation, has more people leaving this province, I'm talking Canadian citizens, than coming in, we may get to a point where the population isn't growing as fast, or it actually decreases, which means dentists who have license and can go anywhere in Canada, we may face a point where we have declining enrollment, or the rate of growth of dentists in this college may go down. That will come with financial considerations. So our ability to administrate effectively and cost effectively is going to be front and center. Second, correct regulation. Our job is to protect the public. And we do that through two ways. One, reactive measures, ICRC and discipline. And two, proactive measures. Don't forget, we are the resource and the regulator for the profession. So this part, I think, we can certainly use IT to do better. And so let's just back this up. You know, everybody's talking about ChatGPT, and I'm sure the next generation will tell you how it can write an essay for you. And you know why it can write an essay for you? It's because large companies who run these AI measures have read every single page on the internet. They can write an essay for you. So how far are we from somebody or some commercial organization reading all the regulations for all 50 US states and all 10 dental regulators? And then that day of reckoning, I think, is coming soon. And someone at a flick of a switch will be able to tell regulatory bodies who overregulate and those who underregulate. I think that's coming. So overregulation is not correct regulation. It raises the cost for everybody. And underregulation is not correct regulation. Which brings me to my last point. I think by the time the next 2 years are up, this college, with the staff and the resources and the time we have, can develop a digital way for us to disseminate information. An app. We should have an interactive app that our registrants can use. That's my dream. However, I know and I've learned dreams don't work unless you work. And so I'm ready to work, and I really want to see this come through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nalan. I'll turn now to Anthony Lischio.
Morning, fellow council members. Well, that's a really good start. Fellow council members, let me share why my name is before you as a candidate for Vice President of the RCDSO. With many years of professional dental experience and a long history of leadership, I'm deeply committed to contributing to the continued excellence of our profession, as well as advancing the RCDO's mandate in working in the public interest and putting patients first. Throughout my career, I've gained invaluable experience, both in clinical practice and in various leadership roles. In addition to my general dental practice, I've worked as a locum across the Greater Toronto Area and have serviced First Nations and Indigenous communities in Northwestern Ontario and the central region of Nunavut. These experiences have provided me with a unique perspective on the various needs of both parties, patients, practitioners, across diverse cultural and geographical settings. I've had the honor of serving on the RCDSO Council representing District 9 since 2023, and furthermore, my involvement as a committee member and panel chair in the ICRC since 2019 has deepened my understanding of our regulatory framework. I believe that my experience in governance, including over 20 years as chairperson on several boards, will enable me to contribute meaningfully to the strategic direction of our college. I've also demonstrated my commitment to the dental profession throughout my involvement in numerous associations, serving as president of the Toronto Crown and Bridge Study Club, president of the Toronto Academy of Dentistry, chair of the ODA Education Core Committee, co-chair of the ODA and CDA annual spring meeting. I've been an advocate of continuous professional development in dentistry, as well as having participated in specialized courses such as the Harvard's Law School's negotiation program and the Carl Misch implantology surgical course. As vice president, with the help of our amazing staff, I would work diligently to foster collaboration, inclusivity, and innovation, while ensuring that we support the public's trust and uphold the highest professional standards. The college is a complex organization, guided by numerous statutory instruments and accountable to multiple agencies. And so I look forward to the opportunity of contributing to the ongoing evolution of the Royal College of Dental Surgeons. I thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you, Anthony. And I will turn now to Mark Trudell.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, fellow council members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you briefly this morning. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to express a personal welcome to the new members of council, Daniel, Iliad, Neil. I very much look forward to working closely with each of you in the coming term. Congratulations on your successful appointment to council. I also very much would like to acknowledge the returning veteran members of council. For the past 5 years, it's been a great pleasure to work collaboratively with each of you for the public interest. And I very much look forward to building on the synergy that I believe we have going for us as a council as we enter this new term. So I'm very grateful that you're back and you're on point and on course. Now to introduce myself, particularly to the new members of council. I'm from London, where my wife and I have raised 4 adult children. I'm a Franco-Ontarian. I'm fluently bilingual French-English. I'm a licensed professional engineer with over 45 years of experience of practice in the area, primarily civil and environmental engineering, along with corporate management and corporate governance, primarily in relation to large public infrastructure projects, including hospital and healthcare facilities, and private sector project developments. Admittedly, I've failed miserably at retiring twice, and I presently serve as vice president for a large national consulting engineering firm. My work at the college began in June of 2019 as a public member of council. I've served on the following committees: discipline, fit to practice, financial audit risk, including most recently as your interim chair, and on the executive committee. And during the most recent term, I've had the pleasure of serving as vice president. It's been a privilege to serve in this capacity. I'm both humbled and I'm very grateful for having had that opportunity. Today, I ask for your support in electing me for a second term as vice president. Now, as you're aware, there are several major initiatives presently underway at the college, including the divestiture of the PLP, evaluating the college's continued ownership and occupancy of the office building and the land which it owns, and transitioning the defined benefit pension plan from the college balance sheets. These are just 3 amongst the major projects in play. Correspondingly, I believe that continuity, fiscal accountability, and a solutions-oriented approach are what is needed at this point in time. And it's what I believe I can provide to college, to this council, to council, to the college, and to the public. I also believe it to be important that the leadership function at this college be shared between a public member and a professional member. I believe that is very important in respect to the balance of responsibility and keeping in mind the public's interest. So in closing, I serve at the pleasure of council, at your pleasure. And I would like the opportunity, should you so choose, to continue to protect the public interest as a public member in the capacity of vice president of this college. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to all 3 candidates. We will now open up the voting. In a moment, you will see the ballot on your screen. And I will just inform you that we have 3 candidates. So if a candidate in the first round of voting receives a majority of the votes, so 12 or more, that candidate will be declared the winner. If none of the candidates receive more the majority of votes, then the lowest number of votes will drop off the ballot, and we will do it again with 2 candidates. So that's just, and we'll come back and I'll just reaffirm those rules as we go through. But when you see your ballot, you can start voting, and for all of us, it will just be a pause until we sort through the votes and the results. Council, I have a result to share. So there will be another vote. Anthony Licio will be dropping from the ballot, and the next ballot will be Mark Trudell and Nalan Bargava. So if you wait momentarily, you will see the ballot on your screen. And I would thank Anthony for putting your name forward. And in a moment, as I said, you will see a ballot with Nalan Bargava and Mark Trudell. So I know that the ballot is there, and I'm just looking to our virtual council members and hoping that everyone is receiving it and able to vote. And just please let us know if you're experiencing a problem. Council, I have the result. And your vice president for the council of 2025 to 2027 is Nalan Bargava. Congratulations, Nalan. At this point, I will ask if the president and vice president would like to assume seats at this end of the table. It may be disruptive based on the laptops and equipments. So it is obviously an open invitation. But I want to congratulate Dr. Harinder Sandhu and Dr. Nalan Bhargava, and we will move on now with the remainder of the votes. We will elect the remaining positions one at a time, and in between each position, ask if there are nominations from the floor. So we will move on to the final position of a professional member, a dentist on council, as there must be a total of 3 dentists on the executive committee. I've received 2 indications of interest prior to this meeting for the 3rd dentist position on the executive committee. Anthony Licio and Aaron Walker. So I'm going to turn to each individual, and then I will open the floor for any other nominations or self-nominations. So first, Anthony Licio, are you prepared to let your name stand for this role?
I'm going to withdraw in favor of Aaron.
Okay, thank you. Aaron Walker, are you prepared to allow your name to stand for this role?
I wish to stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations? And as I said earlier, please don't nominate anyone unless you have talked to them before this meeting. Seeing none, then Dr. Aaron Walker, you have been elected for a role on the executive committee by acclamation for the 2025 to 2027 RCDSO Council. Congratulations. And Aaron, you may wish to say a few words.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it's an honor to be here at this table with all of you, with your skills and your inspiration and commitment to the public interest. I'm looking forward to next term. We have a number of really exciting initiatives in the works. We're tackling a number of really important issues like corporate dentistry, access to care, governance reform. And these are things that have the potential to highly impact how patients are cared for and help to ensure that they're getting consistent and equitable and top-notch access to care from dentists in Ontario. So thank you again for your confidence, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you this coming term.
Thank you and congratulations, Aaron. I will now turn to the public member positions. I've received 3 indications of interest prior to the meeting for the 2 positions of public member. Nizar Ladak, Brian Smith, and Mark Trudell. So again, I will ask each individual and then open the floor for any further nominations. Starting with Nizar Ladak, do you wish to allow your name to stand for this role?
I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Smith, do you wish to allow your name to stand for this role?
I do.
And Mark Trudell, do you wish to allow your name to stand for this role?
I do.
Are there any other nominations for a public member or self-nominations for the public member positions on the executive committee? Okay, seeing none, we will now ask the candidates to say a few remarks, starting with Nizar Ladak.
Thank you, Dan. Colleagues, within my allotted time, I wish to share a little bit about my skills and competencies, and secondly, my motivation to serve on the RCDSO's executive committee. In my role as a council member, I serve on 2 ICRC panels, number 4 and number 11. I also serve on the RCDSO's governance committee, and I'm on the policy standards working group. In addition to my RCDSO service, I'm the incoming board chair of the Touchstone Institute, an organization that supports foreign-trained medical professionals obtain their licensure in Canada. I'm also chair of the Touchstone Institute's Governance and Nominations Committee. In other words, I have a great deal of governance experience that I wish to bring to the RCDSO. Professionally, for the past 33 years, I have held progressively senior roles such as president and CEO of 2 separate provincial and federal non-governmental organizations. I've been a vice president and chief information officer of a community teaching hospital
and I've been the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of a provincial governmental agency. In sum, I believe these professional and governance experiences will be helpful to our registrar and to the RCDSO as we participate in governance modernization and regulatory professional reform over the next few years. In my remaining time, colleagues, I wish to speak about my motivations for serving on the RCDSO's Executive Committee. Colleagues, I'm happy to share that I've written a book over the last year. The book will be published by Sutherland House, and you will see it in bookstores within the spring of 2025. The book is both a memoir and contains leadership lessons I've learned over my career. The reason I felt it was germane to share this is one of the many lessons I share in my book is about the ethic of service. I speak about Canada's virtuous cycle, where a refugee like myself directly benefits from Canada's social service net and the virtuous cycle that this creates, whereby others like me, once on their feet, can choose to devote their time and knowledge to elevating our fellow Canadians. The ethic of service is a quality I sincerely believe in, and it is what motivates me to help fulfill RCDSO's mandate of putting patients first, where we ensure the public has safe, equitable, and competent oral health care. We provide leadership to the dental profession through regulation. Lastly, colleagues, a motto I have come to internalize over my career is excellence breeds excellence. I continue to be highly motivated to serve the RCDSO because, like all of you, I am afforded the opportunity to serve with remarkable leaders like Dan, Andrea, Jill, Dana, Aldwin, and our college equity officer, Michelle, to name a few. Having had the opportunity to work alongside each of them inspires me to do the very best to put patients first. So let me conclude by also thanking my fellow nominees, public members for putting their names forward. Your desire to serve and convey your leadership to this community is another way in which the public steps up to put patients first. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazar. I'll turn now to Brian Smith, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have a few moments to share with you some of my past involvement with not only RCDSO, but a number of community groups and services. I have originally was appointed to the RCDSO in March of 2020. And through that, since that time, I've had an opportunity to participate in a number of committees that I'll touch on in just a moment. But to give you an idea of what I was involved with, it was primarily in healthcare, community healthcare services. I served as a program supervisor with Administrative Health and Long-Term Care, the Kingston Regional Office, a municipal counselor in the city of Belleville for 10 years, served as Director of Personnel Services at Trent Memorial Hospital, and Treasurer Tax Collector for the Township of Ameliasburg. And I'm pleased to say that no one here has any outstanding taxes. You'll be pleased to know that. One of the interesting things that I've done in my career is served as honorary colonel with 424 Transport and Rescue Squadron in CFB Trenton. That's a very important organization, not only to the Quinte community where I live, but to the entire forces of Canada and elsewhere throughout the world. Also served on the Electrical Safety Authority as a public member, the Quinte Healthcare Board of Directors as chair. Quinte Healthcare is composed of 4 hospitals: Belleville General, Prince Edward County Memorial Hospital, Trenton Memorial Hospital, and Bancroft Memorial Hospital. And I've had the opportunity to serve in a wide variety of activities over my years, and certainly look forward to continuing in that vein. To go directly to RCDSO, I've had the pleasure of serving on the executive committee for the past year. Have served on the ICRC panel number 1, which is, and also served on a number of panels as substitute, Patient Relations Committee, Emergency Class Working Group, Professionalism Working Group, Trauma Informed Practices Working Group, and from time to time, after my initial service on the Discipline Committee, as may be required. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor to be a member and serve on this board. The important work is always being done here, but there's a lot of work to be done that I would look forward to working with you and others to achieve those goals. We are blessed, I believe, with a great group of individuals on council, and also our staff is second to none. And so RCDSO, I think, is positioned, and as other speakers have said before, to take on the challenges, make the changes that are necessary to do that. And I respectfully request your support to be appointed as a public member and continue to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Mark Trudell, do you wish to address council?
Thanks, Dan. I'll make this brief. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Nolan on his appointment and election to vice presidency. I have all the confidence that he will hit it out of the park. It's been a pleasure serving with him on the executive, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank Anthony Licio for having stepped up and presented his name. Thank you for your service and for having done so. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Brian Smith for his dedication and role over the past term as a colleague on executive. He's done some tremendous work and his service is very much valued. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate our president. It's so good to, Harinder, that you're back in the saddle and having an opportunity to close the circle on some of those big initiatives that we have in play right now. In closing, I ask for your continued support in my function and role on the executive as a public member for the reasons I had expressed earlier: continuity, competency, and dedication to service in the public's interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So council, momentarily, you will see a ballot with the three candidates listed. I will just remind you, if I didn't say it at the beginning of the public member section, we are voting for one public member at a time. So we will deal with the ballot in the same way that we dealt with the previous ballot that had three candidates. We will declare a winner, and then we will go back to vote for the second public member position, and we'll go through the nominations process again. So you should see your ballot very shortly. And please vote. We are still looking for 23 votes. For sure. Council members, I'm told that we are at a hold at 22 votes. So if you are still waiting to vote, please do so. Council, I can report that one candidate did receive the majority of votes, and that's Mark Trudell. Congratulations, Mark. So council, we will now vote for the second public member on the executive committee. And I will turn to first Nizar Ladak. Are you willing to allow your name to stand?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. Brian Smith, are you willing to allow your name to stand?
I am.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations from the floor? The nominations are closed, and I will turn first to Nizar to see if you would like to address council.
Thank you, Dan, but no, I think I conveyed what I wanted to initially.
Thank you, Nizar. Brian, would you like to address council?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. So you will see momentarily a ballot with the two names for the final public member position on the executive committee. And once again, we are waiting for 23 votes. Thank you. Council, I do have a result, and we will have a break shortly. Congratulations, Brian Smith, on the second public member role on the executive committee.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Brian. Well done. Thank you. That was very seamless. I want to congratulate all of the members of the executive committee for 2025 to 2027. And council, please join me in congratulating the group. I'm now going to turn the chair back over to our professional chair, Hannah Weinberg.
Thank you, Dan, and congratulations, everyone. We are approaching a break and we do have some timed items on our agenda. So I'm going to ask your indulgence because we have a little bit of additional time. I'm going to ask you to go to item number 13 on your agenda. I'll give you a moment to find that in your package. And that's the appointment of the RCDSO representative to the National Dental Examining Board of Canada. So if you could find that in your agenda, please. This item is for your decision, and the materials can be found from pages 133 to 169. For the benefit of those joining us on YouTube, the NDEB develops and administers examinations to confirm that individuals who apply for registration as dentists have met the national standard. Staff is recommending Dr. Noah Goma to be its representative to the NDEB. Dr. Goma is Assistant Professor and Associate Director for Dentistry Research at the Schulich School of Medicine and Dentistry, Western University. Dr. Goma has been the Western University representative on the RCDSO Council since January 2023. She's been the college's representative to the NDEB since April 2023. Dr. Goma has carried out her responsibilities with care and expertise, and she has kept the registrar up to date on issues relevant to both the NDEB and the RCDSO over the past 2 years. Dr. Goma served as the organizer chair of the Canadian Oral Health Summit in 2024. Dr. Goma was also recently appointed to co-chair the NDEB Research Committee. So at this point in time, apologies to Angelo, I'm going to ask if you could put the appropriate, I know we're going out of sync, but the appropriate motion on the screen, please. And the motion for council's consideration is that council approves the nomination of Dr. Noah Goma to represent the RCDSO at the NDEB. And that is moved by Anthony Lisho, seconded by Harinder. All those in favor, if you could please raise your virtual hand. That motion is carried. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Dr. Goma. And the next item I would like to jump to before we break is item number 14 on your agenda, and that's the Council Strategic Planning Meeting. And this is just to remind Council that the strategic planning session that staff have begun to plan for in 2025. This item is for your information. It's going to be a brief one, and I'm just going to turn it over to Dan for his brief remarks, please.
Thank you, Hanno. And Council, you're all quite familiar with the importance of strategic plans, and staff have certainly done a lot of work on the existing plan and thinking about what the future holds for us. And I've certainly had a number of conversations with our president as well. What I want to do is just give you a brief update on what we're hoping to accomplish and how we're going to take the current version of the strategic plan and convert it into more of a vision for this college, for RCDSO. And just a brief background here, when I arrived in 2020, this college had just approved its first strategic plan. It was very ambitious. There were a lot of projects. And in 2023, we approved what I call a refresh of that plan. So we narrowed in, we were much more focused on some key projects, and you hear about those at every meeting. You see in your package, you will have an update on every project, and you have lots of opportunity to talk about individual items within those projects to really help to form positions of the council. What we are seeing now in the environment are incredible changes, and some of our candidates for the executive committee commented on those. We're seeing incredible changes in the regulatory environment. We're seeing incredible changes to the delivery of oral health care. And what we want to do, and I think it's time for this college and this council to do, is really understand what the future might hold and really start to think several years out as to how regulation will change, how oral health care delivery will change, and how we as a college can be ready for that. And so we are planning for a council retreat in June. You've all seen the polling for dates, and we're still working on that, and hopefully we'll be able to finalize something shortly. And we are also in conversation with several individuals that might serve to facilitate the session. But it won't just be facilitation of the day and a half that we're planning for those meetings. It will be a lot of the work that happens between now and then. And what we're anticipating is that every member of council will have an opportunity for an interview. What are your views? What are you seeing? What are your perspectives? What do you think is going to be the shape of oral health care delivery and how regulation intersects with that, looking out 7, 8, 9 years from now? And we'll come together in June and not just brainstorm, we will really focus around themes, and we will really narrow in on themes. And that will launch your staff through me to develop a very detailed plan that can be executed over the next few years based on that vision that you outlined. So I wanted to share that with you. We're working hard. I'm working and will continue to work with Harinder as president on this. And we will keep you updated and informed about some of the mechanics and the process of that in the very near future. Harinder, I see your mic on. Please.
Thank you, Dan. I just want to emphasize to all of us that I know we are all busy, and there are some indications that the dates which have been suggested are not probably appropriate for some people. I would strongly recommend that if you have to, there's enough time to change your plans and attend that a day and a half. Please make it, because this is going to be so important for us for next, as Dan said, 10 years. We are creating a vision statement, and everyone's participation physically will be greatly appreciated. I know we're going to be doing some work in between. There'll be facilitations, and college staff will, and Dan will be working with us. But please see if you can change your plans if you need to, and attend the retreat. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony Mayer.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm just wondering if maybe you could remind council of, because there were many dates circulated, what are the current dates that are in contention?
I don't think I can do that here, and maybe that's not the best use of our time here, but we'll plan. I'm going to meet with Angie tomorrow, and we're going to talk about what we've received already. There were a number of dates where we were going to be missing 5 or 6 individuals. So I think what we'll want to do, as Harinder said, talk to those individuals to see if they're really hard dates that they cannot make the retreat. Ultimately, I think we will probably have to accept that there might be a couple of people who aren't able to make it, but we're going to do our best to get as many, if not all of you, around that table in June.
Thank you. At this point in time, we are going to momentarily get ready to go on a break. After that, we will have a number of education sessions which will be closed to the public. So for those following online, we will return to the live stream at about 2:30. Over the lunch hour, the Governance Committee will meet in a closed session dealing with the slate of committee member recommendations. As per the bylaws, the previous Governance Committee met in December of 2024 to review and propose non-council committee members to relevant committees. So to new members on council, I'm going to give you a heads up. Our morning breaks are not usually this generous. We do have a timed item, a speaker who will be here at 10:30. So I would ask that by 10:30, everyone is back in this position so that I can turn it over to Dan, who will introduce the first speaker for our education system. But the live streaming will end now. We'll resume again at 2:30, and I ask for your cooperation that you're all back in your seats by 10:30. Thank you very much.
Dan, it's Alan. Mm-hmm.
Governance Committee. The materials for this item are at pages 106 to 111 of your meeting package. As this item proposes bylaw amendments, it is for council's decision. I know you've read the briefing notes, so I will briefly summarize the proposal for you today. At its meeting on December 17th, 2024, the Governance Committee decided to recommend to Council that the composition of the FAR Committee be amended to include an additional non-council committee member. Today, Council is asked to consider and approve a proposed bylaw amendment to effect this change. This change would take place immediately to support the committee appointments for the 2025-2027 term. Council has heard previously the rationale for adding non-council committee members to other college committees. Governance modernization trends in Ontario and beyond include committees that are composed entirely or partially of persons who are not on the governing council or board. Including committee members who are not on the governing board increases transparency, accountability, and public trust in the decisions of committees. Adding non-council committee members creates an opportunity to recruit for a specific skill set that may not be found on the board. Most importantly, adding non-council members to committee composition enables greater diversity of perspective on the committee. I will now turn it back to Hanno, please, to facilitate discussion.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this point in time? Seeing none, could I have the next motion on the screen, please? And the motion for your consideration, Council, is that Council approves an amendment to Bylaw 4, Article 4.11.1, to add one additional non-council committee member to the composition of the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee as set out in Appendix A, commencing when the committees are appointed in January 2025 to read. The Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee shall be comprised of the following members: the President, at least two members of council who are members of the college, at least two public members of council, and two non-council committee members. And since this is a bylaw change, we will require a 2/3 majority, which will be a minimum of 15 people in favor. Moved by Judy, seconded by Christina. Those in favor, please raise your virtual hand and leave it up so that we can do an accurate count, please. So it's 5, 10, 15. So we have 19, so that carries it. You may lower your virtual hand, and I will ask if there are any opposed to that motion. So if you voted in favor of it, please lower your virtual hand. Those opposed to the motion? Those abstaining from the motion? I mean, it's carried with 19 votes. Oh, sorry. One abstention. My apologies. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a slate of RCDSO committees 2025 to 2027. Council, you will have received the proposed committee slate in your email inbox. We will give you 1 or 2 minutes to ensure that you've had the opportunity to review it. Once I have done that, I will turn it over to Ann Coughlin, but we'll give you a minute or two to ensure you've had an opportunity to review that email. And while you're doing that, I will slowly turn it over to Ann Coughlin, Chair of the Governance Committee to present the report from the Governance Committee, which met today. So Anne, I'm going to turn it over to you now, please.
Thank you, Hano. I am pleased to present the recommended committee slate for the 2025-2027 term. This item is for council's decision. In December, the Governance Committee met to review committee candidates and develop a committee slate of chairs and members for the 2025-2027 term. We had an outstanding level of interest this cycle, receiving non-council committee member applications from 53 dentists. The Governance Committee met again today at lunch to discuss necessary adjustments to the slate resulting from the outcome of this morning's Executive Committee election. In our deliberations, the Governance Committee considered a number of factors when developing recommendations for committee appointments. Factors for consideration are set out in the operational policy of the Governance Committee, the section on committee appointments. The number one consideration was the effective working of all college committees. We had to start from that premise. The Governance Committee took into account the committee terms of reference and the committee's specific competencies. The Governance Committee considered diversity of perspectives on committees. The guiding principles for governance at the RCDSO state, quote, "We seek diversity and inclusion among council, committees, and staff, as well as the perspectives of patients and the public, so that our decisions reflect the needs and lived experiences of the communities we serve," end quote. In September 2024, Council approved RCDSO's EDI commitment statement. We believe that the skills and backgrounds of committee members should reflect the diverse nature of the people of Ontario. So we refined our recruitment to promote applications from diverse populations, and we were very pleased with the result. The Governance Committee also works to ensure a balance of experience and new perspectives on committees. Members' individual preferences were also considered. Where candidates expressed several committee preferences, the Governance Committee tried to give one. In certain circumstances, we needed to appoint members of the Executive Committee and Governance Committee as committee chairs because of their particular expertise and to enable business continuity. In certain circumstances, council members, particularly some public members, were appointed to several committees because of statutory requirements and their availability to serve. On the recommendation of the Executive Committee, the slate before you includes membership for the Governance Committee. As Hano mentioned, the slate was emailed to all council members at the end of lunch, and will be posted on the college's website shortly. I'll now ask that the motion for the slate of RCDSO committees 2025-2027 be called up, and I'll turn it back to Hano.
Thank you. If we could see that motion, please. Okay, here it is. That council approves the slate of committee members for the 2025 to 2027 term as circulated by the Governance Committee. That's moved by Vivian, seconded by Christina. Prior to taking the vote, are there any questions or comments to be made? Okay, and that there are a lot of hands, yes. So maybe what I'm going to ask is if everyone could lower their hands. We have the mover and the seconder. Okay, now any questions for Anne and the work of the committee? Robin.
Is it possible to remain on the registration committee?
I'm going to defer that question to the registrar, please.
So I think what council has heard is the approach that the governance committee took and described in great detail. The algorithm, so to speak, that was used to decide where individuals would go. Lots of considerations. And I think at this point, to make any changes to the committee structure does have a bit of a domino effect in different ways. So that's trying to repeat back the general principles that Anne, as chair of governance, has already reflected.
Thank you. So I see no further questions. So again, I will read out the motion. We have a mover and a seconder that council approves the slate of committee members for the 2025 to 2027 term as circulated by the governance committee. All those in favor, please raise your virtual hand. Thank you. You may lower your hands, please. That motion is carried. Those opposed, if any are opposed, Mark, lower your hand. One opposition. Thank you. That motion is carried. Next on the agenda concerns a proposed amendment to the registration requirement of the Dentistry Act. Council, as you are aware, a procurement process to transfer the Professional Liability Program, PLP, including current liabilities and staff, to a third party is underway. Once the RCDSO no longer owns and operates the program, the college will need to identify a way to ensure that all registrants have coverage. The material for this item is on pages 112 to 132 of your package. And just to note, before we begin the presentation, there is a minor amendment to the wording in the regulation. The revision will be made in the regulation that is posted for consultation. The revision is on page 132 of the PDF, Reinstatement on Application section 33.1, and that should read, was charged or found guilty of any criminal offense in any jurisdiction. So the final three words, which are in red and struck out, should have been removed. The revised version is the version that will be posted, and this item is for your decision. And at this point in time, I'm going to hand it over to Hilary Bauer, Manager, Registration, to walk council through the proposal. Hilary, over to you, please.
Thank you, Hanno. Good afternoon, council. So we're here today to speak to you about a draft regulation amendment that we're bringing to you for approval in principle so that it can be posted for the required 60-day public consultation. You have in your materials package, as Hanno mentioned, a detailed briefing note about the proposed amendment, including some background information as to why the amendments are being proposed and details on the amendments and rationale for those proposed changes. I have presenting with me today Margot Orchard, who's an independent consultant who many of you have met before. Margot is the project manager supporting the college through the PLP divestment process, including the regulation amendment. Next slide, please, Angela. So looking at the purpose of today's discussion, Margot will start by providing a brief overview on the status of the divestiture process. And then we're going to look at the actual amendments themselves and the reasons for why we're proposing those changes. And then we'll ask council to consider a motion for approval of the release of these amendments for the 60-day consultation. A couple of comments before we get started. We have worked very closely with legal counsel on drafting these amendments. So Alan Bromstein, who is on the screen as well, and his colleague, Amy Block. And we've also had an opportunity to present the amendment to the registration committee, who had a discussion and an opportunity to ask questions and provide some comments about the content, given that this does impact the registration regulation directly. I'll pass it over to Margot.
Thanks, Hillary. Next slide, please. I'll start by reminding you all of the importance of professional liability protection and why it's something that the college needs to continue to care about after the PLP is divested. The purpose of professional liability protection is to make sure that patients have access to appropriate compensation if they experience harm or injury related to professional services. This is something that has been determined to be essential for all regulated health professionals in Ontario. And in 2013, the Minister of Health at the time, Deb Matthews, issued a directive to all councils of regulated health professionals, mandating them to put requirements in place to ensure that professional liability protection is mandatory in all settings and for all practicing members. At that time, no action was required for the college because the PLP was in place and had been for 40 years. The college had assurance that all members had liability protection. Next slide, please. Now, fast forward 10 years, and we're preparing for a different future state. In December of 2023, Council directed the college to explore the process of divesting the PLP. And since then, a mergers and acquisition advisor, PwC, has been secured, and under the direction of a procurement review group, which was appointed by executive committee, we're in the midst of the divestment process. It's expected that the divestment of the program to a third party will take place at some time during the 2025 calendar year. I should note here that this does not mean that members will suddenly be scrambling looking to find liability protection. It's expected that the current protection offered through the PLP will continue throughout 2025, and a transition plan will be in place to provide assurances to both dentists and the public that stability will be maintained after this for a period of time. Maintaining this stability and ensuring that we're certain there are no gaps in coverage is a key priority for the divestment and something that we'll take very seriously. All this being said, once the transition is in place and we're ready for a longer-term future state, we need to use alternative approaches to ensure all registrants have coverage, and we'll need to be able to set some rules and ways of ensuring certain requirements are met. Next slide, please. The way that we will ensure this is through regulatory amendments. And the majority of colleges already use this approach. So the plan is to set regulations to accomplish three things: to make liability protection a registration requirement, so that anyone applying to be a member of the college must show they have professional liability protection in order to be registered; to establish an ongoing obligation to maintain that professional liability protection; and to provide a mechanism for the college to respond if that protection is not maintained. Next slide, please. The regulation changes that are being proposed outline the expectations of members and the consequences if those expectations are not met. And I should mention here that the regulatory amendments will be complemented by a set of bylaws. And these bylaws will be brought to council later this year to outline the minimum requirements for professional liability protection. So the regulation outlines the expectations, and the bylaw will outline the nature and extent of coverage that's required. But coming back to the regulations, next slide, please. The new requirements are straightforward. Anyone who wants to be registered as a dentist will need to show proof that they have professional liability protection. Once you're a member, you must maintain that protection in order to practice. And we're suggesting that this be imposed through subjecting every member's certificate of registration to a term, condition, and limitation. And this is the approach used by many other colleges, including those regulating pharmacists, physicians, optometrists, midwives, dental hygienists, and dental technologists. And creating a term, condition, and limitation ensures that no member is allowed to practice without professional liability protection, and allows the college to subject that member to disciplinary action if they violate this rule. Next slide. I've described the expectations for professional liability protection, and now I'll describe how the regulations would allow the college to enforce the requirements and what happens if the requirements aren't met. The way this would be enforced is through suspension provisions. We're introducing the ability for the college to suspend a member if they do not provide information or evidence to confirm that they have adequate professional liability protection. The provisions have been developed with a right touch regulation approach, allowing the suspension to be lifted by the registrar immediately when the issue is rectified, without having to formally apply for reinstatement, which is currently the process. It should be noted, though, that this lighter touch approach is not being applied at the expense of public protection. Because of the term, condition, and limitation that would be in place for all members, they would be prohibited from practicing if they do not have adequate professional liability protection. And should a dentist practice without that protection, they may be subject to disciplinary action. So the lighter touch is being applied to make the return to practice easier once the issue has been resolved. I'll just summarize this really briefly in a visual on the next slide. Thanks. So the suspension provisions I've just discussed provide the mechanism for the college to respond in situations where members do not provide information or evidence related to professional liability protection. I should note, we're also suggesting that the same changes be made to the existing suspension provisions for non-payment of fees for the purpose of consistency and improved processes. And I'll briefly walk you through the process and describe the approach. Starting on the left, a member is expected to pay their fees and provide information or evidence to the college to confirm that they have professional liability protection. Now, the mechanism for how the college will do this is a really critical part of the implementation process and still to be confirmed, but we expect that it will happen at some point during the annual renewal process. If a member fails to do these things, they would be considered non-compliant, and the following would happen. After a 30-day notice period, the member would be formally suspended and would have 60 days grace to rectify the issue. At any time during this grace period, the member could rectify the issue and have this suspension lifted immediately. If they aren't able to solve the issue within 60 days, they will have their license revoked. And if their license is revoked, a member can apply to have it reinstated. I should also note that if a member's license is revoked, they currently must meet a number of requirements to get their license reinstated. And we're suggesting broadening these requirements to offer added protection to the public and to be consistent with other colleges. For example, we've added some new exclusion criteria that members cannot be reinstated if they have been charged or found guilty of a criminal offense, if they were refused registration in another jurisdiction, or if after they ceased to be a member, they were the subject of a finding of professional negligence or malpractice. As I mentioned, throughout this process, whether the member is on notice, suspended, or has their license revoked, the term, condition, and limitation on their certificate would prohibit them from practicing at any point if they do not hold valid professional liability protection. And before I pass it back to Hillary, I just want to reiterate that these regulation amendments are being proposed for the long-term future state after the divestment has happened and we've reached a stable, steady state. We will be communicating to dentists that they will continue to have seamless liability protection for a period of time after the divestment, and that they won't need to make any immediate changes during the transition period. We know that regulation amendments time, and so we need to get these in now so that we can have the regulations in place when they're needed. So I'll pass it back to Hillary now to describe some other changes we're recommending.
Thanks, Margot. Next slide, please. So while the primary purpose of the regulation amendment is really to address the need for a mechanism to require and enforce liability protection once PLP is divested, we're taking this opportunity to propose a few additional amendments to streamline registration processes where we've identified a need to enhance public protection, reduce unnecessary barriers, and anchor to best practices of other colleges. Next slide, please. So these additional amendments are in 3 areas, and the first one Margot has just spoken about, related to the reinstatement provisions. We've broadened and added a few exclusions to enhance public protection on when someone would be barred from reinstating. The other 2 areas, which I'll go through in turn in a moment, relate to work authorization and what we call the continuous practice requirements. Next slide, please. Okay, so looking first at work authorization. The requirement for work authorization is a pre-existing registration requirement for all classes of registration. So anyone who applies to the college must demonstrate that they have the appropriate work authorization to work in Canada. So this can be demonstrated through Canadian citizenship, a PR status or PR card, or through a work permit. However, the college currently does not have a way to ensure that dentists maintain that work authorization while they're in practice. So the aim of the amendment that we're proposing is to ensure that work authorization is maintained once a dentist is registered. The way that we are proposing to achieve this is through introducing a term, condition, and limitation on every certificate of registration that will require a dentist to maintain that work authorization. So practically speaking, what this means is that if there is a lapse in work authorization, a dentist has to stop practicing. We're suggesting that using a TCL is a right touch approach. You heard a bit about right touch regulation this morning from Harry Caton. If there's a lapse in authorization, the dentist can maintain their certificate of registration. There's no suspension. It just means they have to stop practicing and notify the college. Then once the lapse is rectified, they can return to practice immediately. I should also mention this approach is consistent with other colleges and also mirrors that of the College of Nurses of Ontario, who have a very similar TCL already. Next slide, please. So the last amendment that we want to speak with you about is related to what we call the continuous practice requirements. There are 2 existing continuous practice requirements in the regulation already related to both general and specialty applicants. The purpose of these requirements is to ensure that a dentist who has already completed the required training and passed their licensing exams maintains the necessary competence and skills to practice in Ontario. So, for example, a dentist applying to the college may have completed their licensing exams some time ago and never actually practiced in Ontario. Or perhaps a dentist who previously practiced here resigned and went and practiced somewhere else for a long period of time, and they want to come back to Ontario. The reason for these provisions is really to ensure that those dentists and those examples that I've just spoken about are safe to practice according to Ontario standards. So what we're proposing are to make 3 minor revisions to streamline this pre-existing process and remove some unnecessary barriers that we've identified. First, the amendment will allow the registration committee to recognize practice from jurisdictions that they deem are comparable. This is already the case with other jurisdictions in Canada, the United States, and those that are accredited by the Commission on Dental Accreditation of Canada, which includes New Zealand, Australia, and Ireland. With these changes, the committee will be able to approve additional jurisdictions where they feel that practice is comparable. Next, the revisions will allow us to focus only on the immediate 3 years prior to application. And finally, we will no longer require the registration committee to review applications where a specialty applicant recently completed their specialty exams. So the details are quite technical, but ultimately what I want to communicate is that the aim of this amendment is really to streamline the process for dentists who have recently demonstrated their competence, either through practice in a jurisdiction that the committee or has otherwise been deemed comparable, or who have recently completed their exams. Next slide, please. And we can just go right to the next one. Thanks. Okay, so with council approval, the amendment will be circulated for a required 60-day public consultation period. During that period, staff will collect feedback on the proposed amendments through a survey. And then after those 60 days, a summary of the feedback would be presented to council for final approval of the regulation amendment. At that time, any recommendations from staff would be brought forward to you based on the feedback that we've collected. After council approves the amendment, we'll submit a formal submission to the ministry for their review and approval. And then after that point, there's a process the ministry has to follow on their end before it receives official approval. We are aiming to have this regulation in place by the end of this year. This is just a goal. We are in close communication with the ministry as we move through this process. They're aware of the need and the importance of this regulation change as well as our timing, and we're working together with them to move this forward as quickly as possible. And that's it. Margot and I are happy to take any questions that you may have, and then after that, we'll present the motion for your approval.
Thank you, Hillary and Marco. So at this point in time, I will create a speakers list for questions. Daniel Haas, you're first.
Thanks very much. That presentation was very helpful. I have a brief question, which might not really matter in the end, but it has to do with the insertion of the NDSC. And it's on page 115 of the PDF document that we have. And you're using the NDSC as an anchor point for continuous practice. And I guess my question is, specialists have to take the NDSC, but the reg goes on to say something to the effect of, or another exam that is deemed equivalent by the college. And the example where that's used is dental anesthesia, because dental anesthesia was not recognized nationally until 2023. So there is no NDSC at this point for dental anesthesia. We're hoping it will be in effect by June of 2026 at the earliest. So dental anesthesia is left out of this, and it might not matter in the end, but this doesn't capture all the specialties. So it's just let you know about that.
Thank you for that comment. So that, I think that's the intention of why that additional catch-all is there, so that we can in fact capture examples like you've just described. And we do, as you know, accept the American exams currently.
Correct. It's just when I read it here, it just mentioned specialty program or the NDSC.
Oh, sorry. Are you saying we have in the updated version, we don't include the additional caveat?
On the PDF in your description of the explanation and rationale, it doesn't mention NDSC or other equivalent assessment. So I'm not sure if that is in the document, but
yeah, we'll make sure we capture that.
I'm just looking at page 115 on the right side. You give the explanation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say NDSC or equivalent.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. We'll make sure we capture that in the version then. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alan, I did see your hand was up, but it's down now. Did you want to say something?
Well, just that it is in the proposed regulation. It's just not in the explanation. And council has previously approved an exam for dental specialty, so it continues to be approved.
Thank you. I have no other speakers on my list, so if I could have that motion on the screen, please, for council's consideration. And council, you are being asked to consider that council approves the regulation amendment proposal attached as Appendix A as amended in principle, and direct that it be released for a 60-day public consultation period. That's moved by Ram, seconded by Brian. All those in favor, please raise your virtual hand. And that's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. You may lower your hand. So council, if we refer to our agenda, we have already addressed items 13 and 14, which moves us to item 15, which is the adjournment and the stretch break. So that's going to be a little bit more complicated, and I will walk you through that process. We do have a speaker coming. She will be here at about 3:40. Will require, I think, a minimal tech setup. So my proposal would be that by sort of 3:40, we be ready to reconvene in this space for our last education session. But To prepare us for that, I just wanted to remind you that our next public council meeting will be March 27th. It will be a hybrid meeting. You will also have the opportunity for an education session that's scheduled for council on February 28th. Our next education item, or session, which we will be gearing toward in the next few minutes, is closed to the public. After that education session, we will be going to an in-camera session to discuss a matter at the request of Dr. Harinder Sandhu. Attending that in-camera session will be council only. In the interest of transparency, we will table that motion now. So if I could have that motion on the screen, please. And this is the motion to prepare us for going into the in-camera session following our education session. And the motion is that the public be excluded from the meeting of council pursuant to clause 7(2)(f), and that financial or personal or other matters may be disclosed of such a nature that the harm created by the disclosure would outweigh the desirability of adhering to the principle that meetings be open to the public. That's moved by Anthony Lisho, seconded by Jamie Colliver. All those in favor, please raise your virtual hand. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So for those who are still following along, we are going to be ending our live stream session shortly. We will be taking a break, reconvening as close to 3:40 as we can. Once our speaker is here, we will let you know that. Following that session will be the in-camera session, and then those members who are part of the in-camera session will simply reconvene to officially adjourn this meeting. So before we all sign off, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank council for your participation today, and a big shout out to staff, all the staff that we see here, but all the staff that we don't have the opportunity to see, for the incredible amount of work that went into the session. This session has been a longer session than we're normally used to because it's incorporated a significant amount of education, but hopefully everyone has felt that that education has been worthwhile. I know from my perspective, I think it's been an incredibly productive and informative day, and kudos to all staff and all the hard work that you have done to make such meaningful sessions for us all to participate in. So at this point in time, we are going to be ending the live stream. Council, again, to the newer members, you're going to have a longer break than you normally have at this stage of the game. So enjoy it. And when our speaker is here and ready, hopefully by sort of 3:45 at the latest, we'll bring you back in so that we can start that. And then for those people who are part of the in-camera, would also mean your session will be over a little bit sooner. So thank you again, and we're on our break.